Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Tony Marolt joining us here, founder of Lead Left, Grow Right. Happy to have you back. Why don't you give your introduction this time, because you're a man with many hats.
Thank you, Jill. Yes, many hats over a long career. So I started really focusing on leadership when I was in Boy Scouts, because I consider it the largest leadership laboratory where people can fail forward safely. I then moved all those leadership skills from high school into college, where I went to the United States Naval Academy. Got tons and tons of training, both practical as well as in your head knowledge kinds of things. I then served on 3 different ships, 9 years in the Navy, and I got to teach for 2 years back at my alma mater, teaching midshipmen how to be officers and how to steer ships and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I exited the Navy because of family concerns and went out into the big wide world of corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And I did about 6 months as a production supervisor in a union shop up in California. And that proved not a great choice for me, because once I got in there, I found the leadership there I call it the 1910 management philosophy. So not a lot of practical, new, modern ways of treating people and helping people run organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I then moved into numerous positions within Hallmark Cards for over 25 years, a lot in the supply chain, quality engineering. I kind of did almost everything in the supply chain to some degree, and finished with about 8 years in technology, implementing large software called SAP, which is enterprise software that goes across the organization. And then exited, parted ways with Hallmark, and started my own company. And I'm here today, and I'm the author of a book called The Leadership Quotient. I urge you all to get it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold, because I use it frequently in our broadcast here. So please do that. It's The Leadership Quotient. You can contact me several ways. The first is to tony.marolt@gmail.com.
Perfect.
You can also reach me on my website, Lead Left Grow Right, all one word, leadleftgrowright.com, and fill out the contact form, and it'll shoot right into my email. So,
Got it.
Thanks.
All right. Today, I know we're talking about the right kinds of conversations to have and to how to start having them. Anything you want to add quickly about last week as well?
Yeah, last time we got together.
Last time, yeah.
Yeah.
I get
Normally it is a
confused.
week, but we had a little interruption there. So, so last time we really talked about foundation. We're kind of going into this world of fierce conversations, which was written by Susan Scott, and I feel is so fundamental to being a great leader. So we're just lightly covering the subjects within there. But last time we talked about really establishing your foundation, understanding why kind of you were put here on earth, what's your purpose.
Yep.
Very, very fundamental to a leader. We talked about integrity and moral courage and character, and how that really if that's not a part of your foundation, then in my opinion, you can never be a great leader. If you're unethical or don't have integrity, don't do what you say, follow through, etc., all those things. And then we talked about, in a lot of organizations, people will say, particularly people in positional kinds of management, like the title supervisor, manager, or CEO or whatever, they'll say, I have an open door policy, and please come in. And you may find that you may get in to see them, you may not. They may have just said that, and then it's really difficult to get through their administrative assistant or whatever. You can't usually do a drive-by to say, hey, I wanted to discuss something with you. But if you do, often you can get in a conversation, and then that's where you'll find out if that person really has an open door policy, because it will become apparent pretty quickly, either in that session or afterwards, whether open door to them means, hey, I listened to you, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Thanks for stopping by. And there are others that are open door policy where people will say, that's a really great idea. Let me check out with this. Or, I really appreciate your opinion. Can you go and find out some more? The best leaders will send you back out there trying to get some more information for them. Yeah. So you can tell pretty quickly if they say, thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and you take off. So I'm sure you've had experiences like that, right, Jill?
Oh, haven't we all?
That's why it's so fundamental. Exactly. Everyone has
Mm-hmm.
done that. So that's kind of a recap of where we were.
Okay. Well, let's move on. I want to get through today for sure because it's
All
been a
right.
while. So let's, take up where we left off then. It would be talking about, it was Susan Scott's statement around our very lives succeed or fail one conversation at a time. Why not start there? Talk
Okay,
about the importance of conversations for us today, Tony, please.
that's exactly right. That's a great part to start. We touched on it last time, but we didn't really have time to get into it because we kind of fleshed out the foundation piece and a little bit in detail. So um, let's talk about the importance of conversations. There are good conversations and there's not good conversations, or maybe better said, there are productive conversations and there are non-productive conversations, or sometimes surface conversations is another way of saying that. Um, Susan Scott, as we said, they succeed or fail one conversation at a time. So every time we have an interaction with another individual, that's our time to either enhance that communication, enhance that relationship, to either flatline it, so keep it the same, or we can tear that conversation, or that conversation can actually tear down the relationship or drop it or make it decline. And some people say, well, yeah, if I'm just talking to someone for one time, it's not a big deal. I'm going to submit to you that it is a big deal, because the world is full of amazing coincidences, and you never know whether that person might be someone you turn to 10 years later,
Mm-hmm.
that if they had a good impression and felt like you've established some connection, they might be able to help you. Perhaps they become a boss of yours, or
Mm-hmm.
a peer, lots of different things. So don't think that any conversation is not important, but
Okay.
it's up to you to have that conversation with people and to really enhance the conversation, and fierce conversations gives you a way to do that rather than having a surfacey discussion. Jill, what's your favorite sports team? um, I'm sure it's the Kansas City Chiefs like mine, but if not, that's okay.
None. I don't do sports, don't follow sports. My kids
All
are into
right.
sports. Everyone I know is into sports and enjoy. One thing I don't like.
Enjoy.
Yeah, I don't. I got
Yeah.
sports tonight, but no, I don't. I don't have any fan. I go
Yeah.
whatever. I go wherever I get tickets to go, just to go. I really don't
Used to go.
care. Yeah. Yeah. Like I used to live right next to City Field, right? And I'd get free
Yep.
tickets for what I do. And then people would be like, oh, why, you're such a Mets fan. I'm like, no, I just go wherever I'm getting free tickets. I'm going to be honest. I could
And
care
it's
less.
it's very close to where I live, so
Yeah.
I just thought I'd
And
do
I get
that.
press parking. It's 5 minutes away. It's easy. Yeah.
Mostly, I'm kind of with you. I'm not a big sports guy, which I know is very non stereotypical, but the Kansas City Chiefs are an exception for me. And my son's the one who keeps those fires burning for me. Um, so again, the ability within that conversation, and as we go on, we'll talk about tools that can make those conversations fruitful, can make those conversations authentic. So sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
go into a conversation, we're very guarded with people. We don't want them to let that, or we don't want to let them know who we are,
Mm-hmm.
um, those kinds of things. And no, you don't want to just blurt out everything. Hey, here's my life story. Here's all the terrible things that have happened. And here's all the awesome things that have happened. No, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
But you have to come from a place that's authentic. And that's sort of how you work at home and how you live at home and how you have your own
Yeah.
personal code. Bring that to work. If you don't bring it to work, you're a completely different person. Hard to have authentic conversations with others. So,
Yeah.
And then, so as I said, every conversation is critical, and particularly in business, whether you're a nonprofit organization or a for-profit organization, you're going to have customers, you're going to have people that you serve, you're going to have suppliers, all of those things that make up conversational opportunities, your partners, your boss, et cetera, et cetera. Each conversation is, as we said, really critical. And business, I've been reading and reading so much over the last couple of weeks about leadership. And over again, it's about the conversation. It's about emotional intelligence. And what businesses need really are black belts.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want people that never applied themselves. They want people that are black belts. And all of us can become better. Maybe we never achieved black belt in communication, but boy, we can earn a lot of other belts right underneath that, right? And that means we will be pretty good communicators. Again, if we are able to train ourselves to have fierce conversations. And the only way you'll have fierce conversations, you got to practice.
Yeah.
And again, first conversations are not about scary. It's not about trying to blow up the world, but sometimes they are very difficult to have. And so there's a certain element of fear in having a fierce conversation, but it's up to you to manage that conversation successfully, hence the black belt. Another thing that Susan said is being real is not the risk. The real risk is that I will be known, I will be seen, I will be changed.
Yeah.
So if you sit back and aren't in a driver's seat and you don't try to have authentic conversations, yes, you can become known from it. You could get a good reputation or a bad reputation. But you want to be seen. And if you have conversations like that, you eventually are going to have some changes yourself. And the reason you'll have changes is because you will learn. If people don't understand, and it's a very difficult issue that's being debated now with return to work and not. If you can't have real conversations with other people, it's very difficult to establish your reputation. And you can't, if your corporation says, okay, it's all away from work. Well, if everyone else is going to the corporate dining room or the lunch area and having discussions with their peers, or maybe making an appointment to talk with someone in another division, or trying mentoring program, well, you're going to be left behind, unfortunately. So people are wrestling with that right now because a lot of people want to stay at home for a lot of good reasons, but it's very difficult. You and I can still do it, but we're going to have a lot of dedicated time to be able to do that and have conversations and me learn about you. Let's say you're the vice president in another division and I'm in the IT division. Well, we can have it, but that means we've got to schedule that. And that's just not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind when you're working from home is, hey, I better schedule some time because I'm not in the office with people I want to meet. And, networking sometimes has a real negative tone. I know early in my career, I used to think about that, particularly in corporate America. But when you network, really, if you go into it with, hey, this is an opportunity to have conversations with someone from another area or from a different layer in the power structure and really learn about what they do and what their department is. And if you know more, if you're in IT, for instance, and you're meeting with the vice president of marketing, you might walk away from those conversations saying, wow, now I have a much better understanding of what the business needs are when we implement our software. So, does that make sense?
Does make sense. My superhero king, by the way. For those on the podcast don't realize that he is a superhuman and he is his own superhero character. Do you have your superhero nickname? I gotta ask.
Um, at one point I did, but
Don't tell me you forgot, Mr. Hallmark Man. Come on. No one trademarked to anything.
No, honestly, I'm trying to remember. I don't know.
All right. That's okay. Okay.
Maybe Project Man. I don't know. That would be one of them.
Project Man, right
Project
conversation man, leadership man. I don't know, something. Yeah.
Jack of all trades, man.
Yeah. All right, let's continue. So, you were talking about having those types of conversations, and yeah, with the leadership quotient man. Okay.
Exactly, the leadership quotient man. That I am that. So.
All right, good.
So,
And at this point, gosh, halfway through, remind us how we can contact you. Lead left, grow
either
right.
Tony.Marolt@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Lead left, grow right. And at the website, leadleftgrowright.com, and fill out a contact form. And you can call me 816-694-4656 as well.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So back to our conversation. Where do we leave off?
Well, we kind of talked about, what these kind of conversations are at their essence. And I know sometimes that's hard to grasp at first, but if you think about, again, how fruitful is your discussion if you bring yourself authentically to it as opposed to no, you don't. So you want to have deep, authentic conversations with people. And the reason you want to have them is so you can learn about them, they can learn about you, and then you can build relationships. So then the question is, well, how do you have those kind of conversations? So let's talk about this practice. There's a practice within Fierce Conversations of interrogating reality. So again, this is the how to have those kinds of conversations. So interrogating reality starts with a question that is posed. Who owns the truth? Who owns the truth? Well, some people will say, well, that's the finance department, or that's the senior vice president of global procurement, or whatever. And the reality is everyone owns a bit of the truth. Everyone owns a bit of the truth.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
And if everyone owns a bit of the truth, then you have to get everyone's input or their truth out on the table. And that doesn't mean you have to call in every person in a 4,000 person company. It kind of depends, but you want to get a broad base of input. You want to interrogate the truth. So those people that are important for the discussion, you want to bring them in, and you want them to get, your job is to get them through Fierce Conversations to bring their ideas, bring their problems, bring their opinions out and put them out on the table rather than keeping them inside. Because if they keep them inside, what does that mean? You're missing part of the truth. And so you may make a decision that's not the best decision because you fail to bring people in. And I love this analogy that Susan says. It's like a beach ball, right? If the beach ball itself has all kinds of truths, well, one person might be on a white stripe, another person could be on a yellow or a blue or whatever the colors are around that beach ball. So it's your job to bring those together so that you can have a great decision made. And so, um, you know, sometimes people, CEOs in particular, say, well, I hear you, but that is going to take a lot of time. And the question that you need to turn back to them is, you're right, it is going to take more
It's
time
mm-hmm.
if we get everyone's truth out on the table, but it's going to take a whole lot less time than if we didn't.
Yeah.
We you can extend project times, you can shorten project times, and then screw it up completely because you didn't, well, who did you talk to? Well, I talked to John and Mary, and this is what we decided. Really? That's only two of our divisions, or that's only two departments. Have you talked to the people in X department and Y?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know you're a big stickler for, let's move fast. That's what happens.
Yeah.
People will be encouraged to move fast, especially towards deadlines on projects and interim goals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to get everyone, you got to get the beach ball out on the table. If you just get one stripe or two stripes, you're not going to be able to have fierce conversations, and you're not going to get to all the sources of the truth that you need to get at. So, do you have time to do right, or do you have time to do it over and over and over and over? And I've seen that happen so many times where it's like, oh, man, that wasn't right. Now we got to go back to the drawing board. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
reason you're going back to the drawing board is because
Yes,
you didn't
yes.
draw with all the markers the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's important. Um, you have to resolve all of the issues truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
So if Susan over in IT comes to the meeting and Susan doesn't really say much, then wow, what a miss that would be if you don't have the
Yeah.
technical people involved. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that happens, and sometimes that happens because of relationships within that group that aren't good. And oftentimes it could be they're not good because they did not have a fierce conversation. Could be something from years ago. And Susan says, well, that Tony, he ripped me off. I failed to get a promotion because of him 10 years ago. Well, that's not good if we lose Susan. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of that pay me now or pay me later.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes what people do, so here's some of your challenges in interrogating the truth is sometimes you'll get people that'll be in a meeting and they'll do this, right? And that's called the corporate nod. So they're saying they're
It all the
agreeing,
time.
they're not talking, and they don't really mean this. They really mean, so the corporate nod, if you see people doing the corporate nod, you got to work even harder to get them to bring their
Can he
truth.
call them out on it?
Yeah,
Like,
I would, but you have to do it in the right way. Again, it's a fierce way. You could say, if you were giving me the corporate, I could say, Jill, you seem to really be taking this all in and kind of, moving it around in your brain. What are your thoughts about whatever they just covered or
and then
something
the
else?
person's like, you could see in their eyes if they're not paying
Right,
attention, or
right,
they're like, or they'll
right.
come honest with you. So, well, I was thinking maybe I didn't agree with that. Maybe it would come out if you single them out because they
Yeah,
can kind of sense it. All right.
right. And sometimes they're very adept at pairing, to use a word, with sword play. They may say something, but you have to recognize, say, okay, that one didn't work. So let me say,
Yeah.
so can you expand on that a little bit, Jill? Or are you saying, here's another way to do it? I always say use questions
Mm-hmm.
95% of the time,
Okay.
especially in those kind of situations where you could,
Okay.
hurt someone's feelings or whatever. Is like, well, Jill, are you saying that this and this and this is? Well, now they have to either affirm that that's what they said, Or, well, no, what I really meant to say was this. So that's how those are ways that you can interrogate reality, bring
Mm-hmm.
people into the conversation without being off-putting, without devaluing them, but bring them into the conversation. Introverts in particular sometimes take longer to speak up at meetings because they're processing a lot of stuff in their head, whereas extroverts process a lot of stuff externally, right? They're talking, but they're talking, and there's nothing wrong. My wife is a super extrovert, and everything she does is coming out of her mouth, but it's problem solving. It took me years, to figure
Mm-hmm.
that out. I'm like, oh, she just solves problems a different way than
Yeah.
how I solve problems, which is in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So all those kind of elements play into interrogating reality. And I know our time is short, so um, we'll take this up next time and we'll talk about um, how to identify the issue, the real issue, and get through that and eventually get to a point where everyone's in some sort of agreement. So the goal is to seek agreement, seek a solution that everyone can live with. A lot of people think
Yes.
consensus is everyone agrees. Consensus is not that. Consensus means I can live with the result.
Perfect.
So again, encourage you to
Yeah.
get the leadership quotient, read that, contact me, 816-694-4656, or through the website, leadleftgrowright.com.
And the best way to gain power is,
To give it up.
yep.
Got to
Thank you
give it up.
so much. All right,
All
Tony,
right.
pleasure having you back. Feel
Thanks,
good.
Jill.
We'll talk soon, hopefully next week. If not, I know
Okay.
sooner or later. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for always
Thanks,
enlightening
Jill.
us.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.